In the 12th century in Paris, France, a fateful relationship would blossom between a medieval scholar and a young female student. Medieval scholar Peter Abelard believed that women can be ordained deaconesses equal to male deacons in the church. However, his treatment of his former female student, Heloise, after both were ordained, put his theory to the test. Before we examine Abelard's treatment of Heloise, let's look at his philosophical beliefs and the history of their relationship. Peter Abelard was a charismatic and popular teacher in philosophy and theology. Although he was the son of a knight, he renounced his inheritance to become a scholar. In 1092, Abelard began studies in Paris. After becoming a teacher in 1100, he then established his own school in Paris in 1106. Peter Abelard's contributions to philosophy include ethical theory and metaphysics. Regarding ethical theory, Abelard believed that moral decisions should be based on deep contemplation of the consequences of one's actions. He also disputed the idea that all moral decisions should be mainly defined by religious doctrine. Abelard taught that individual choice and personal responsibility should be considered when making ethical decisions, and that quest for happiness be considered in making moral decisions. Regarding metaphysics, Abelard would question the Aristotelian understanding of reality by suggesting alternative ideas. Abelard discussed universals as mental concepts and stressed the importance of reason and logical analysis in obtaining knowledge. Fulbert, who was a canon in Paris, brought his niece, Heloise, to Paris. Heloise was both very intelligent and beautiful, and Abelard immediately was attracted to the young woman. Fulbert and Abelard arranged for Heloise to become Abelard's student. Heloise commenced with her private studies with Abelard around 1115. Shortly afterward, Heloise and Abelard begin a passionate affair. Fulbert finds out and separates them, but they continue to see each other in secret, leading to a pregnancy. The couple wed in secret. Fulbert becomes outraged and seeks revenge. Abelard is brutally attacked and castrated. After Heloise gives birth to a son, who she names Astrolabe, she decides to be sent to a nunnery. Abelard loses his position and begins corresponding to colleagues. In one letter, he writes about Heloise, the reputed niece of one Fulbert, a canon. Her wit and her beauty would have stirred the dullest and most insensible heart, and her education was equally admirable. Heloise finds out about his letters and writes one of her own. Why should I alone not reap the advantage of your learning? When you write to me, you will write to your wife. Marriage has made such a correspondence lawful, and since you can without the least scandal satisfy me, why will you not? Abelard writes back to Heloise, beginning their historic correspondence. Could I have imagined that a letter not written to yourself would fall into your hands, I had been more cautious not to have inserted anything in it which might awaken the memory of our past misfortunes. Heloise's letters offer much more than just the expression of her love for Abelard. Heloise fought for her right to be seen as a thinking and free agent in her writings, not one who was swayed by her bodily desires. For example, in the third response to him, she begins the letter with her request for both an account of how the order of nuns began and a rule arranging their way of life. After identifying the thinking behind her two requests, she continues her critique of existing religious life. The letters between Heloise and Abelard reveal an ongoing dialogue concerning the roles and shared responsibilities of men and women within the religious life, which, according to one study, were topics that were growing concerns within the Reformed communities. Even though both were ordained, Abelard considers Heloise's recommendation and confirms that he has no objection to women being well educated. In Abelard's last letter, he writes that the nuns of the Paraclete learn Greek and Hebrew as well as Latin, recommending that Heloise can teach them. He is advising an unusually high level of learning, greater than that which was being taught in the convents or monasteries at that time. Both Abelard and Heloise agree that to be a good nun is to understand sacred texts, and that cannot be done through ignorance. In other words, one cannot be virtuous and therefore contribute to the life of the convent if one is not educated. One of the reasons Heloise fought for the right of the nuns she oversaw was so they could get a proper education, which could help them succeed as scholars once they had taken orders. In conclusion, Abelard, although still advising Heloise like the student she once was to him, respects her and communicates to her on an equal basis regarding the convent and the importance of educating the nuns. Ultimately, the couple ends up together at last, leaving the